The director of the Congressional Budget Office, who's the nonpartisan kind of economist for Congress, testified that his understanding of the economic literature was that even in a scenario where there's that radical warming, 5-6 degrees centigrade, that the cost to the United States would be entirely manageable, perhaps 3% of GDP.
I think that's ludicrous, and it's not clear really what the real foundation for those kinds of estimates are. That would be saying that living in conditions which we haven't seen for 30 million years on this planet would involve just minor adjustments.
I think the idea was that it was a sectoral analysis, and it was saying the impacts of climate change would be primarily felt in fields like agriculture and power production and electricity, and those are very small percent of U.S. GDP, and the future growth in U.S. GDP is expected to be in IT and healthcare and such.
See, I can understand the arguments, and I've read them, but I don't think they really stack up in relation to the huge changes that we'd be trying to deal with. You would likely have massive movements of population. You'd have potential sea level rises, although they come quite slowly, of course, but they come inexorably, which would start to make many parts of the coast of the US untenable, just like other countries. You'd have potentially massive movements of population, in the case of the Northern Hemisphere, away from the equator and northwards. And potentially enormous world conflict. And I simply don't think that a sectoral analysis which extrapolates a little bit from the kind of temperature changes that we've seen gets to grips with the transformation of the world economy likely to come from 4, 5, 6 degrees centigrade and the massive movements of people that are likely to be involved. So running through the various sectors of the economy and knocking off a few percent here and there hardly gets to grips with the kind of transformation of the geography of the world. We have to see this as a whole-scale transformation of the relationship between human beings and the planet, and a consequence of massive movements and potential conflict. We haven't seen movements of population of the kind that we're talking about here. So, a little bit of mucking about with a percentage here and there of this sector or that sector doesn't really begin to come to grips with the magnitude of the kind of changes we could be talking about. So that seems to me a very narrow and misplaced view of the economics of climate change. It doesn't get to grips with the magnitude of the risk. It doesn't get to grips with the dynamic and unstable changes that could come as a result of all this. It's a very narrow view of economics on the most optimistic of possible outcomes.